Welcome to Coffee and Wisdom. I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation, and we take a humanist look at theological and philosophical ideas on coffee and wisdom. Thanks for joining in. Have been sharing some definitions of humanism. This week's is from the Bristol, UK Humanist Group, which says humanism is an approach to life based on reason and our common humanity, recognizing that moral values are properly founded on human nature and experience alone. All of the different definitions of humanism from different groups are a little bit different, but they do add up to a more or less common understanding that human beings need to fix human problems. This week, I've been looking at utopias that worked out, sort of. And one of them was imagined by William Morris, the British artist. He said, "If others can see it as I have seen it, then it may be called a vision rather than a dream." And that's what he wants to do, is to bring his utopian vision into reality. The book that he explores his ideas is News from Nowhere, which was published in 1890, really kind of the height of the progressive era in the UK and in the United States. A lot of utopian thinking was going on, a lot of political and economic thinking was going on. William Morris was a libertarian socialist. The idea being that the best kind of organization is going to be on the ground and local rather than some kind of top-down idea. He wrote, "I do not want art for a few any more than I want freedom for a few." So, and these go hand in hand according to Mr. Morris. We want to have all people free economically and politically, but also we want all people to be involved in the common project that is art. "Have nothing in your houses that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful," said William Morris. And yeah, he was anticipating that idea of downsizing and doing away with random stuff. He started the arts and crafts movement, as we call it nowadays, in 1861 to make quality art and design available to the widest possible audience. And yes, that's why you can go to antique shops and friends' homes today and see the arts and crafts movement furniture that was produced in the 19th century throughout the 20th century and is still being made today. Part of what William Morris set in motion was the Garden Cities movement. Ebenezer Howard, an architect, in 1902, published the book called Garden Cities of Tomorrow. And really, the idea here is for people to be able to live within green spaces, healthy air, not a lot of pollution from factories as they had in those days. And nowadays, certainly control of automobiles and the exhausts from those. Now, one of the things about making utopia possible is looking at the realities that we are living in. William Morris was living in a particular reality of the Industrial Revolution had been going on for a while, taking farmers and rural people out off of the farms and sending them to factories, it leading to what he was diagnosing as some kind of alienation from the work. Whereas if we get back in the workshop and actually build a chair, we are expressing our creativity, but also we do understand what it is we're doing, unlike the alienation that Karl Marx talked about. Stress in America is one of the big things that's going on right now. This is a report from March the 11th. What are you stressed about, Americans? Well, 87% of Americans say they are stressed by rising prices, inflation, gas prices, etc. 81% are worried about supply chain issues. I may not be able to get those things that I want to buy. 81% of Americans are also concerned about global uncertainty. 80% to retaliation from Russia, which includes cyber attacks and nuclear threats, and 80% are concerned about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So here we have it. There's a large proportion of Americans who are stressed today about various things that have to do with the news and what's happening within our economy, et cetera. And we also know that as the pandemic wanes, we hope, there are a lot of people leaving, the great leaving or the great sick out, or there's been being called various things, the great resignation. But there are a lot of people leaving their jobs. Why are they leaving their jobs? Well, this study shows that number one, the pay is too low. 63% of the people who quit their jobs say that. Well, that's because nowadays they can go to another job because we have extremely low unemployment at the moment. No advancement opportunities in that particular job. 63% of the people who leave say that. Felt disrespected at work at 57%, and then on down. But we do have this great resignation going on. And part of it has to do with a whole lot of stress. Part of it has to do with a reorientation of values that people felt during the pandemic and the great shutdown that we had. There is indeed a website called stress.org. It's pretty good. You can go there and find out some ideas and percentages of stress and that kind of thing. One of the things that stress.org says is you don't have to stay at a job just because it pays the bills. Most people spend more time working than sleeping. The average person spends 40 to 80 hours a week or 2,000 to 4,000 hours a year working. And yes, that's a dystopia. You're working almost as much as Batman if you're doing that kind of thing. Stress.org says this: stop working in a job that you see no future in. Remember that advancement piece of this. If your best friend or child told you that they were going to spend 4,000 hours giving their emotional, mental, and physical energy to something or someone that wasn't going to value them, give anything back to them, or pay them what they were worth, what advice would you offer? Give the same advice to yourself. You won't be stress-free unless you don't learn this. And indeed, this is certainly going right back to William Morris and his concern about especially the Manchester, England factories that were turning people, as he saw it, into machines. Well, what to do? Uh, uh, there are some utopian ideas that kind of work and maybe can be scaled. That's kind of the debate, I think, at the time being. We do know some ways. And one of the ways to do this was thought of by Paolo Soleri, 1919 to 2013, an Italian-born architect who established the Educational Consanti Foundation and Arco Santi. If you haven't heard of those, let me give you a little bit of a clue in. Arcology is a portmanteau word putting together architecture, the word architecture, and ecology. The idea here is, can we build a way to live in a built environment that is also ecologically friendly, and therefore we help the planet and we make people happier? Good idea, isn't it? He said this: it is only logical that the pauperization of our soul and the soul of society coincide with the pauperization of the environment. One is the cause and the reflection of the other. So we have souls that are tired, stressed, etc., and we create the world around us as tired and stressed. He also said this: our throwaway culture has made obsolescence the measure of its dynamism. The pernicious effect of planned obsolescence is the erosion of excellence. You know what? William Morris almost said that, a little different phrasing in the 19th century than in the 20th, but you get the idea. Junk stuff, quickly made stuff in factories just doesn't reflect the way we human beings want to live in the world. We want to live in an artistic world, is what Solari is saying. We must redefine the American dream before we can rebuild the infrastructure on which it is based. Can we get to a place where we begin to think that beauty and art are the things that we want out of life? And yes, Arco Santi was his idea, Solari's planned community for 5,000 people in the Arizona desert. It's 70 miles north of Phoenix and founded in 1970. And yes, it is there today, and you too can go and visit them. As a matter of fact, you can go visit their website and learn a little more about Arco Santi, the world's first prototype arcology, as it says. Yeah, all of this information is readily available online. Right. According to William Morris, one of the things that Arco Santi does is it makes things that are valuable and beautiful and artistic and heirloom quality, as they say in their advertising. And what they dedicated themselves to at this particular city is windmills. What a good idea in the desert, huh? And yes, you can indeed go on the Cosanti website and see these handmade bells. They go all the way from about $250 to whoa, $3,000 and $4,000 for larger bells. These are handmade and cast in the ideal city. Well, the idea that Paolo Solari was following then is, how do we get our spiritual selves up to a healthy level, get rid of that stress, get to a healthy level. And then how do we reflect that in the way that we live? A book that he wrote is called The Arcology of Paolo Solari. The bridge between matter and spirit is matter becoming spirit, says Solari. You can agree with that one or not, but you get the idea that the artistic impulse and the communal impulse of humanity is being accentuated so that we can live in a better world. That's not the only one. There are a few more ideal utopian cities being built these days. For example, Masdar City is a planned city project in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. Mastar's philosophy of development is based on the three pillars of economic, social, and environmental sustainability. And so the beat goes on, utopian ideas that can be more or less realized in our world today. And yes, so we can build this in the desert, and do notice that both of these are being built in the desert. And I do think there is something there that might be interesting to look into. Thanks for listening this week. Next week, I'll be looking more at Utopia and the ideal. How can we find these ideas that we have and then somehow execute them in the real world? Thanks for listening this week, and thanks for joining me. I will be live tomorrow morning, Friday morning at 9 a.m. And if you would like to find out and meet up with us on Zoom, all you got to do is email me, minister@firstunitarian.org. I'll be very happy to send you the Zoom link. Thanks a lot, and I'll be back next week with some more about realizing utopias.